What you are about to witness is not a story of triumph. It is not a tale of a young lion dethroning an old king. This is a story of a lesson. A brutal, public, and unforgettable lesson in respect. It was supposed to be a celebration. A night where a bridge was built between Hollywood's most enigmatic martial arts legend and the new arrogant king of WWE. It was meant to be a passing of the torch, but it became an inferno. Picture the scene, the center of a WWE ring. 20,000 people on their feet, a mixture of boos and stunned silence washing over the arena. A young, chiseled WWE champion lies motionless on the canvas, his reign, his reputation, his very consciousness snuffed out. And standing over him, not a wrestler, not a superstar, but a ghost from the past. A man who hadn't competed in a real fight in 40 years, yet who had just dismantled a world-class athlete in under 5 minutes without breaking a sweat. What happens when respect turns to betrayal? What happens when a tribute becomes a trap? And what happens when a young, arrogant champion calls out a man who has spent a lifetime mastering the art of breaking men? The world was about to find out that some legends are not myths. And some lessons are only taught through pain. To understand how a handshake devolved into this public execution, you must first understand the praise that lit the fuse. Our story begins with Apex Austin Theory. Young, handsome, sculpted like a Greek god, and with an ego the size of a stadium. He had scratched and clawed his way to the top of the WWE, capturing its most prestigious prize, the WWE Undisputed Championship. He was the future, and he knew it. In the ring, he was a spectacle of athletic arrogance, a blur of standing moonsaults and picture-perfect dropkicks. But outside of it, a different side of Theory was about to emerge. In a landmark interview following his championship victory, the usually cocky Theory shifted his tone. He spoke of his journey, the sacrifices, and for the first time, his inspirations. He talked about the larger-than-life figures who made him believe a man could become a weapon. And then, he singled out one name, a name that sent a ripple of confusion and intrigue through both the wrestling and martial arts communities. On-screen quote appears, "Steven Seagal is a true warrior." Theory spoke with a raw sincerity that cut through his arrogant persona. He wasn't playing a character. He was a fan. He described watching Under Siege and Out for Justice on worn-out VHS tapes, mesmerized by the man with the ponytail and the lightning-fast hands. He saw a master, an artist who could end a fight with a single elegant flick of the wrist. To Theory, Seagal wasn't just a movie star. He was the embodiment of untouchable power. This unexpected praise became a viral moment. WWE, never one to miss an opportunity, seized it. They announced that the following Monday Night Raw would host a special Night of Respect, honoring the legendary Steven Seagal. The man himself had agreed to appear. The night of the show, the air was electric. Backstage, an interviewer caught up with a beaming Austin Theory. He was dressed not in his ring gear, but in a sharp suit. On-screen quote appears, "Tonight, I get to thank my hero in front of the world." The ceremony was the main event. The ring was adorned with a black canvas and a single podium. Theory walked to the ring first, soaking in the cheers. He took the mic, and for 10 minutes, he delivered a speech that felt like a son honoring his father. He spoke of Seagal's unparalleled credentials, a 7th Dan black belt in Aikido, the first foreigner to ever operate a dojo in Japan. He spoke of his intimidating presence on screen, a presence that Theory claimed inspired his own confidence. Then, Seagal's music hit. The stoic 6'4" figure emerged from the back, clad in his signature all-black attire. He moved with a deliberate, almost serene grace, his face an unreadable mask. He entered the ring and stood opposite the young champion. The crowd, caught up in the moment, gave him a roaring ovation. Theory, with tears welling in his eyes, unveiled his gift, a custom-made WWE Legacy Championship. its gold plates etched with images of Seagal from his iconic films. He presented the belt to the legend. Seagal accepted it with a slight, dignified nod. They shook hands. They embraced. For a single, perfect moment, it was a beautiful display of cross-generational respect. The torch was being passed. Or so it seemed. As the applause began to fade, Theory held onto the microphone. He smiled at Seagal, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "But there's just one more thing," he said, his voice dropping slightly. The mood in the arena shifted from celebratory to tense. "You know," Theory began, pacing the ring, "after I paid you my respects online, the internet did what it does. The trolls, the haters, the keyboard warriors, they had some things to say. They brought up some stories." He stopped and stared directly at Seagal, whose face remained impassive. "They told a story about a man named Judo Gene LaBelle." A murmur went through the crowd. Hardcore fight fans knew the name. It was the name of a ghost that had haunted Seagal's legacy for decades. Theory's voice turned sharp, dripping with venom and mockery. He leaned in close to Seagal's face. On-screen quote flashes. "A 58-year-old stuntman made you crap your pants." The words hung in the air, a sonic boom of disrespect. The crowd gasped. Theory snatched the legacy belt from Seagal's hands and contemptuously dropped it at his feet. The switch had been flipped. The tribute was over. The ambush had begun. "You're not a hero!" Theory screamed, his face contorted in a mask of rage. "You're a fraud! You're a movie-set tough guy who's never had a real fight in your entire life! You're a myth I'm going to bust!" He was now circling Seagal like a shark. The legend stood perfectly still, a silent monolith in the center of the storm. "They told me about how you were at Sylvester Stallone's party," Theory spat, "and Jean-Claude Van Damme, a real fighter, called you out. He wanted to see if the big man could really go. And what did you do?" He paused for dramatic effect. On-screen quote flashes. "You ran from Van Damme like a coward." "You slipped out the back door," Theory roared. "Your toughest fight has always been the parking lot exit." He wasn't done. He turned his attack to the very foundation of Seagal's identity, his martial art. "And Aikido? That beautiful philosophy? I saw a video. Aikido versus MMA. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. Your art in a real fight looked like Bambi on roller skates. It's an interpretive dance, a magic trick you perform on students who are paid to fall down for you." He pointed a shaking finger at Seagal. "And Anderson Silva, Lyoto Machida? You glommed onto them after they were already champions. You tried to take credit for a front kick that Anderson had been perfecting for years. You're not a sensei. You're a parasite on the legacies of real fighters." The crowd was now booing Theory out of the building. He had orchestrated the ultimate betrayal. He had used respect as a weapon, luring a legend into the lion's den under false pretenses, all for the sake of a shocking moment. He got inches from Seagal's face, their noses almost touching. The transformation was complete. The fan was gone, replaced by the Viper. On-screen quote transition. "You're my hero! Now I'll end you!" "I brought you here to do what Gene LaBelle and Van Damme never got to do on camera," Theory whispered with chilling intensity. "I brought you here to expose you, to strip away the legend and show the world the soft, pathetic fraud underneath. And I'm going to do it right here, right now." He violently shoved Seagal. The older man barely rocked on his heels. He simply stood there, absorbing the insults, the shove, the hatred. His eyes, for the first time, narrowed. The serene mask was gone. The ghost was awake. As Theory ripped off his suit jacket, a referee slid into the ring trying to restore order, but it was too late. The bell rang, signifying the start of an unsanctioned, unholy war. The fight began not with a cagey standoff, but with a primal explosion. Austin Theory, fueled by adrenaline and arrogance, charged across the ring like a freight train, aiming to decapitate Seagal with a thunderous clothesline. It was a move that had felled giants, but Seagal didn't retreat. He didn't brace for impact. He did something that defied all wrestling logic. He moved forward, with a subtle pivot of his hips and a turn so fluid it was almost invisible, a classic Aikido Tenkan. He didn't block the force. He redirected it. Theory's momentum became his own undoing. He flew past Seagal, crashing chest first into the turnbuckle with the force of a car wreck. The arena fell into a stunned hush. The attack was powerful, but the defense was pure physics. Furious and embarrassed, Theory spun around, throwing a wild, desperate haymaker, a punch meant to end the fight right there. This time, Seagal met the attack. Not with a block, but with a catch. His hand enveloped Theory's fist, and in one seamless motion he twisted. It was kotagaishi, the archetypal wrist reversal throw. The narration could describe the brutal biomechanics, the small bones of the wrist being forced beyond their limits, sending a searing bolt of agony up Theory's arm, hyperextending the elbow. Theory let out a guttural scream and collapsed to one knee, cradling his arm. Seagal stood over him, impassive, before releasing the hold. It wasn't a finishing move. It was a sentence in a long, painful lecture. Shaking his arm, a look of disbelief and pain on his face, Theory knew he couldn't strike with this man. He reverted to his own world, wrestling. He shot in low and fast for a double-leg takedown, a move that was virtually unstoppable. But Seagal was ready. As Theory lunged, Seagal's hands descended, not to sprawl, but to grip. He snaked his fingers around Theory's wrist and elbow, locking in a Sankyo hold. He twisted. The technique contorted Theory's arm at an impossible angle, forcing him to either submit or have his shoulder torn from its socket. Theory was driven face first into the canvas. Seagal applied pressure, his entire body weight focused on one small, excruciating point of control. This wasn't a fight anymore. It was a dissection, a master demonstrating his art on a live, unwilling subject. Desperation makes a man reckless. Theory somehow scrambled free, his pride in tatters. He rolled out of the ring and, to a chorus of boos, grabbed a steel chair. If he couldn't out-technique the master, he would brutalize him. He slid back into the ring, his eyes wild. He swung the chair in a vicious horizontal arc aimed directly at Seagal's head. This was the final test, the weapon versus the artist. Seagal didn't back away. He stepped inside the swing into the eye of the hurricane where the weapon's power was weakest. With one hand, he intercepted the chair, his fingers locking around the steel, disarming Theory as if taking a toy from a child. Simultaneously, his other hand became a blur. A series of short, sharp, open-hand strikes, atomy, pummeled Theory's body. A strike to the nerve cluster in the neck, a palm heel to the solar plexus, a ridge hand to the collarbone. They weren't knockout blows. They were surgical shutdowns. The steel chair clattered to the mat. Theory staggered backward, his arms limp, his vision blurry. He couldn't draw a full breath. The strikes had temporarily paralyzed his nervous system. He was a champion athlete, a physical marvel, rendered helpless in seconds. Austin Theory was running on empty. His body was a screaming chorus of pain, his mind a fog of confusion and humiliation. He was beaten. But his champion's pride, his unyielding arrogance, refused to let him quit. On pure, raw instinct, he let out a final defiant roar and lunged forward in a clumsy, desperate tackle. Seagal met him. He didn't sidestep. He didn't throw him. He simply enveloped him. In one swift, final motion, he spun behind the staggering champion and locked his arms around his neck. It was the simplest, most fundamental submission in all of combat. The rear naked choke. And in that moment, history, legend, and reality converged. It was the very same hold that Judo Gene LaBelle had used to put Seagal to sleep on a movie set all those years ago. The ghost that had haunted Seagal, the story that Theory had used as his cruelest insult, was now being turned back on him. It was the ultimate poetic receipt. The choke that wouldn't die had found a new victim. Theory clawed at Seagal's arms, his legs kicking weakly. The 20,000 people in the arena watched in silent awe. The referee moved in, asking Theory if he submitted. But there was no quit in him. There was only pride, and it was suffocating him. His struggles grew weaker. His face turned a deep shade of purple. His eyes rolled back in his head. And then he went limp, passing out in the legend's arms. Seagal held him for a moment before gently lowering the unconscious champion to the mat. There was no celebration, no fist raised in victory. He looked down at the man who had betrayed him, his face a mask of solemnity. He walked over and picked up the custom WWE Legacy Championship that Theory had thrown down. He didn't hoist it in the air. Instead, he walked back and placed the belt gently on Theory's chest. It was not a trophy. It was a tombstone for Theory's arrogance. A message that some things, lineage, mastery, and respect, are heavier than gold. A WWE official handed Seagal the microphone. He looked out at the silent, watching world. His voice was quiet, calm, yet it filled the entire arena with its weight. "Respect," he said, his voice raspy with disuse, "is not given. It is not taken." He paused, letting the words sink in. "It is understood." He let the microphone drop to the mat, and with that, he turned and walked away, disappearing up the ramp as silently as he had arrived, leaving a fallen champion and a stunned universe in his wake. He left behind a legacy that was no longer in question, and a lesson that would be etched into the annals of WWE history forever. This was not just a fight. It was a lesson the world will never forget.